The fairground was a sea of vibrant colors and joyful noise, the night air filled with the scents of popcorn, cotton candy, and the faint tang of machine oil from the rides. Children's laughter mingled with the tinny music blaring from the carousel, and the clatter of game booths was punctuated by the occasional shout of a winner. Sam stood by his booth, a simple ring toss game, watching the crowds with a practiced eye. He'd been a fairground game operator for years, traveling from town to town, always a part of the temporary nomadic family that was the traveling fair. Tonight, however, something felt off. The air seemed charged with a strange energy, a low hum that thrummed just beneath the surface of the merriment. The first sign of trouble was subtle, a flicker of the lights so quick it might have been imagined, then another. Sam glanced around, but no one else seemed to notice. He shrugged it off, attributing it to the old wiring that plagued most fairgrounds. It wasn't until the Ferris wheel began to groan that the crowd took notice. The cheerful screams from the ride turned to cries of alarm as the massive structure shuddered to a halt, lights blinking out one by one. Sam felt his stomach drop. He knew the mechanics of the fair's rides well enough to know this wasn't a simple malfunction. People began to gather around the base of the Ferris wheel, parents calling up to their children trapped in the swaying gondolas. Fair workers rushed to the scene, their faces pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. Sam left his booth and joined the growing crowd, pushing his way to the front. He saw it then. The main support beam of the Ferris wheel was cracked, a deep fissure running along its length. The structure swayed ominously, the groaning metal growing louder. Sam's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the danger. He turned, shouting for people to get back, to clear the area, but his voice was drowned out by the rising panic. The lights flickered again, then died completely, plunging the fairground into darkness. For a moment, there was an eerie silence, broken only by the creaking of the Ferris wheel. Then came the sound that would haunt Sam for the rest of his life, a deafening crash as the wheel collapsed, metal shrieking and twisting. The screams of the trapped riders echoed in the night, a sound of pure terror and agony. Sam stood frozen, watching in horror as the once majestic structure crumpled to the ground. Dust and debris filled the air, the smell of burning electrical wires sharp and acrid. People were running, screaming, searching for loved ones in the chaos. In the aftermath, the fairground was a scene of devastation. Emergency services arrived, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows over the wreckage. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of blood. Sam wandered through the carnage, helping where he could, but the sense of helplessness was overwhelming. He found himself at the edge of the Ferris wheel's remains, staring at the twisted metal and shattered gondolas. The sight was surreal, almost unreal in its horror. He saw a child's toy, a stuffed bear half buried in the debris, and something inside him broke. That night, the fairground was closed indefinitely. The authorities investigated, but the official report concluded it was a tragic accident, a failure of the old machinery. Sam knew better. He had seen the signs, felt the ominous energy in the air. There was something more to it, something that couldn't be explained by faulty equipment alone. As he left the fairground for the last time, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that the spirits of those who had died were watching him, their eyes filled with accusation and sorrow. He vowed never to return, but deep down, he knew he could never escape the memories of that night. Years later, when the fair returned to the small town, Sam found himself drawn back, unable to resist the pull of the past. The ghosts of the fairground had not forgotten him, and neither had he forgotten them. The night the lights went out was only the beginning. The years had passed slowly for Sam, each day a struggle to move forward while the past clung to him like a shadow. He had tried different jobs, different towns, but the memory of the tragic accident was a scar that refused to heal. Nights were the worst when sleep brought dreams filled with twisted metal and haunting screams. When he heard the fair was returning to town, Sam felt a strange mix of dread and compulsion. The rational part of him screamed to stay away, but something deeper, something unexplainable, drew him back. It was as if the fair had a grip on his soul, refusing to let go until the truth was unearthed. The fairground looked much the same as it had years before, a cheerful facade hiding the darkness that lurked beneath. Brightly colored tents and rides dotted the landscape, and the air buzzed with excitement. Sam's heart pounded as he walked through the gates, the sights and sounds of the fair triggering a flood of memories. He approached the manager's office, his hands clammy with nerves. The manager, a rotund man with a thick mustache and a jovial demeanor, greeted him warmly. "Sam, long time no see. I didn't think I'd ever see you back here. How've you been?" Sam forced a smile. "Been better, Jack. But I heard you needed an operator and, well, here I am." Jack's face lit up. "You're a lifesaver, Sam. We're short-staffed this year. The usual booth?" Sam nodded, feeling a chill run down his spine. The ring toss game had been his station for years, a simple setup that now felt ominously familiar. Setting up the booth was an exercise in muscle memory. Sam went through the motions, arranging the rings, aligning the bottles, but his mind was elsewhere. As dusk fell, the fairground came alive with lights and music. The same electric energy that had once filled him with excitement now filled him with unease. The first night was busy, families and teenagers crowding the booth, eager to win prizes. Sam's unease grew with every hour, the whispers and shadows from the past creeping into his consciousness. He kept glancing at the Ferris wheel, now a new shining structure, but the memories of its collapse were vivid as ever. Late into the night, a group of teenagers approached the booth, laughing and joking as they tossed the rings. One boy, tall and gangly, managed to win a large stuffed bear. He cheered, lifting the toy triumphantly. "Nice job," Sam said, handing over the prize. The boy's face was alight with joy, a stark contrast to the grim shadow that loomed over Sam's thoughts. As the night wound down, Sam found himself alone, the fairground quieting as the crowds dispersed. He was packing up when he felt a cold breeze brush past him, carrying a whisper that sent chills down his spine. "Remember us?" Sam spun around, but there was no one there. The booth stood empty, the fairground silent except for the distant hum of the generator. He shook his head, trying to dispel the creeping dread that had settled over him. Walking back to his trailer, Sam couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The night seemed darker than usual, the fairground lights casting long, eerie shadows. As he reached his trailer, he glanced back one last time. There, by the Ferris wheel, he thought he saw a figure, barely visible in the dim light. It stood still, watching him, but when he blinked, it was gone. Inside his trailer, Sam locked the door and leaned against it, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He knew coming back had been a mistake, but it was too late now. The fairground's ghosts had waited patiently, and they were not about to let him go without answers. As he lay in bed that night, the whispers began again, soft at first, then louder, more insistent. The faces of the dead filled his dreams, their eyes accusing, their voices pleading. "Remember us, Sam. Remember what happened." The fair had returned, and with it, the ghosts of the past. Sam knew he couldn't run any longer. The truth was buried somewhere in the twisted history of the fairground, and it was up to him to uncover it before the spirits claimed him as their own. Sam awoke the next morning, his mind still clouded by the night's restless dreams. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale light over the fairground. The whispers from the night before echoed in his ears, fading as reality took hold. Determined to push through the unease, he went about his morning routine, preparing himself for another day at the fair. As the sun climbed higher, the fairground began to bustle with activity. Families arrived, eager to enjoy the rides and games. Sam tried to focus on his work, but the sense of being watched persisted, a constant prickling at the back of his neck. Midday brought a temporary lull, giving Sam a chance to catch his breath. He sat on a bench near his booth, sipping a lukewarm coffee, when he noticed a small group of children gathered a few feet away. They were whispering to each other, casting furtive glances in his direction. "What are you kids up to?" Sam called out, trying to sound more cheerful than he felt. The children hesitated, then one of them, a girl with curly blonde hair, stepped forward. "Mister, we saw something last night, by the Ferris wheel." Sam's heart skipped a beat. "What did you see?" The girl glanced back at her friends, then looked at Sam, her eyes wide and serious. "A ghost. We saw a ghost." Sam forced a smile, though his pulse was racing. "You kids have a wild imagination. The Ferris wheel's just a ride." The girl shook her head vigorously. "No, we really saw it. It was a boy and he looked really sad." A chill ran down Sam's spine. He knew children had vivid imaginations, but their sincerity unnerved him. He decided to brush it off with a laugh. "Well, ghosts or not, you all should stick together and stay safe, all right?" The children nodded, but as they ran off, Sam couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. The rest of the day passed in a blur, his interactions with customers mechanical and his thoughts distant. As dusk fell, the fairground took on a different, more sinister atmosphere. The colorful lights seemed to cast longer shadows, and the laughter of visitors had a slightly manic edge. Sam manned his booth, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread. Around midnight, when the crowds had thinned and the air was cool and still, Sam began to close up for the night. The fairground was nearly empty, the rides slowing to a halt, the music winding down. He was packing away the last of the rings when he heard it, a soft whisper just behind him. "Remember us." He spun around, but there was no one there. The booth was empty, the fairground silent. Sam's heart pounded in his chest as he looked around, his eyes scanning the darkened tents and rides. He felt a cold breeze brush past him, carrying with it a faint, mournful cry. "Help us." The voice was clearer this time, unmistakable. Sam's blood ran cold as he realized it was coming from the direction of the Ferris wheel. With a mixture of fear and determination, he left his booth and walked toward the dark silhouette of the ride. The night seemed to grow colder with each step, the whispers growing louder. When he reached the Ferris wheel, he saw them. Ghostly figures, barely visible in the dim light. They were children, their faces pale and sad, their eyes hollow. They stood in a circle around the base of the ride, their expressions filled with sorrow and accusation. "Remember us, Sam." Sam's voice trembled as he spoke. "What do you want from me?" The ghosts remained silent, their eyes fixed on him. Then, one by one, they began to vanish, their forms dissolving into the night air. The last to disappear was the boy the children had described, his sad eyes locking onto Sam's before he faded away. Sam stood there trembling, the whispers echoing in his mind. He knew now that the fairground was haunted, that the spirits of those who had died in the accident were still trapped, seeking closure. He had to find out what really happened that night, to uncover the truth that had been buried for so long. As he walked back to his trailer, the fairground seemed to close in around him, the darkness pressing against him. The whispers continued, a constant reminder of the past he could not escape. Sam knew that he had to face the ghosts of the fairground, to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in its twisted history. The night was far from over, and the spirits were growing impatient. The truth was out there, waiting to be discovered, and Sam was the only one who could set them free. The next day, Sam woke with a heavy heart and a gnawing sense of dread. The whispers from the night before lingered in his mind, and the images of the ghostly children haunted him. He knew he couldn't continue to ignore the spirits or the dark secrets of the fairground, but what could he do? Where could he start? The morning was bright and clear, a stark contrast to the darkness that enveloped his thoughts. Sam arrived at his booth early, setting up with mechanical efficiency. The day passed in a blur of activity, with the usual stream of families and children eager to try their luck at the ring toss game. Sam's mind, however, was elsewhere, replaying the events of the previous night over and over. As evening approached, the fairground was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. The crowds grew thicker, the excitement palpable. Sam forced himself to focus on the task at hand, greeting customers and handing out prizes with a forced smile. It was then that the first sign appeared. A young boy, no more than 10 years old, approached the booth. He had a mop of unruly brown hair and bright blue eyes that seemed to sparkle with mischief. He tossed the rings with surprising accuracy, winning a large stuffed bear on his third try. Sam handed over the prize, but something about the boy felt strangely familiar. "Nice job, kid," Sam said, trying to mask his unease. "What's your name?" The boy grinned. "Tommy." Sam's heart skipped a beat. He remembered a boy named Tommy from the night of the accident, a boy who had been among the victims. His mind raced, trying to dismiss the thought as a coincidence, but the nagging feeling persisted. "Enjoy the fair, Tommy," Sam managed to say, watching as the boy ran off with his prize. As the night wore on, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He saw glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corner of his eye, heard faint whispers that sent chills down his spine. He tried to ignore them, focusing on the game, but the sense of unease grew stronger. Later that night, as he was closing up the booth, Sam saw Tommy again. The boy was standing near the Ferris wheel, his stuffed bear clutched tightly in his arms. He looked directly at Sam, his eyes filled with a sadness that seemed too deep for a child. Sam's breath caught in his throat. He knew he had to approach the boy, to find out who or what he really was. He left his booth and walked towards Tommy, the fairground eerily quiet around him. "Tommy?" Sam called out, his voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" The boy looked up at him, his expression unreadable. "I need your help, Sam." Sam's heart pounded in his chest. "How do you know my name?" Tommy's eyes seemed to bore into his soul. "You need to remember what happened that night. You need to help us." Before Sam could respond, Tommy began to fade, his form dissolving into the night air. Sam reached out, but his hand passed through empty space. The boy was gone, leaving Sam alone with his racing thoughts. The encounter left Sam shaken, but it also steeled his resolve. The ghosts were reaching out to him, seeking his help. He had to find out the truth about the accident, to uncover the secrets that had been buried for so long. As he walked back to his trailer, the fairground seemed to close in around him, the shadows growing darker, the whispers more insistent. Sam knew that he was running out of time. The spirits were growing restless and they wouldn't wait much longer. That night, Sam sat in his trailer, poring over old newspaper clippings and photographs. He had collected them over the years, unable to let go of the past. The articles detailed the tragic accident, the official investigation, and the names of the victims. But there were inconsistencies, gaps in the story that didn't add up. One photograph caught his eye, a picture of the Ferris wheel taken just days before the accident. In the background, he saw a man he recognized as one of the fair's owners, standing with a group of men in suits. They looked serious, their expressions grim. Sam's mind raced with possibilities. Had there been a cover-up? Had the accident been more than just a mechanical failure? The questions swirled in his mind, but one thing was clear. He had to find out the truth, for the sake of the spirits that haunted him, and for his own peace of mind. As he lay in bed that night, the whispers returned, but they were different now, more urgent, more insistent. The faces of the dead filled his dreams, their eyes pleading, their voices echoing in his mind. "Help us, Sam. Remember what happened." The fairground held the answers, and Sam was determined to find them. The first sign had appeared, and it was only the beginning. The ghosts were growing stronger, their presence more palpable. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and Sam was the only one who could bring it to light. The next few days passed in a blur of activity, but Sam's mind was consumed by the events unfolding around him. Each night, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, reaching for him with unseen hands. He knew he had to dig deeper, to uncover the truth that lay hidden beneath the surface of the fairground's cheerful facade. One evening, as the fair was winding down and the last of the visitors were heading home, Sam felt a familiar chill in the air. He knew the spirits were near, their presence more tangible than ever. He locked up his booth and headed towards the Ferris wheel, drawn by an unseen force. The Ferris wheel stood silent and imposing against the night sky, its lights flickering sporadically. Sam approached cautiously, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. As he drew closer, he felt a sudden rush of cold air, and the world around him seemed to blur and shift. Suddenly, he was no longer standing in the present. The fairground around him was bustling with activity, but it was different. Older, somehow. The colors were muted, and the air was filled with a sense of foreboding. Sam realized with a jolt that he was witnessing a memory, a moment from the past. He saw himself, younger and full of life, working at the ring toss booth. The night was alive with laughter and music, the fairground at its peak, but there was an underlying tension, a sense of impending doom that hung heavy in the air. Sam watched as the events of that fateful night unfolded before him. The Ferris wheel groaned and shuddered, the lights flickering ominously. He saw the crack in the support beam, the panic spreading through the crowd, the screams of terror as the ride collapsed. It was all happening again, and he was powerless to stop it. As the memory played out, Sam felt himself being pulled towards the Ferris wheel. He saw the ghostly figures of the children, their faces twisted in fear and pain. Among them was Tommy, clutching his stuffed bear, his eyes wide with terror. The scene shifted again, and Sam found himself in a dimly lit office. The fairground's owner, the man from the photograph, was arguing with a group of men in suits. They were talking about the Ferris wheel, about safety concerns and the cost of repairs. Sam listened in horror as they decided to cover up the issues, to keep the ride running despite the dangers. The realization hit Sam like a punch to the gut. The accident had been preventable, a tragic consequence of greed and negligence. The fair's owners had known about the structural issues but had chosen to ignore them, valuing profit over human lives. The memory faded, and Sam was thrust back into the present. He stood at the base of the Ferris wheel, his heart pounding, his mind racing. He knew now what had to be done. The spirits needed justice, and the truth had to be revealed. Determined to find concrete evidence, Sam began his investigation. He combed through old records, interviewed former fair employees, and pieced together the puzzle of that night. The deeper he dug, the more damning the evidence became. The fair's owners had orchestrated a cover-up, falsifying safety reports and silencing anyone who questioned their practices. As Sam gathered the evidence, the spirits grew more active. They appeared to him more frequently, their whispers guiding him, their presence both a comfort and a reminder of his mission. He felt their anguish, their need for closure, driving him forward. One night, as he was sifting through a box of old documents in his trailer, he found the final piece of the puzzle. A signed affidavit from a former mechanic who had witnessed the cracks in the Ferris wheel's support beam. The document detailed how he had been paid off to keep quiet, how the owners had threatened his family if he spoke out. Armed with the truth, Sam knew it was time to confront the fair's current management. He arranged a meeting with Jack, the manager, who had always been kind to him. But kindness wouldn't be enough to excuse the horrors that had been covered up. The meeting was tense. Sam presented his evidence, laying out the damning facts one by one. Jack's face grew pale as he realized the extent of the deception, the lives that had been lost due to the greed and negligence of the fair's owners. "We have to come clean," Sam said, his voice firm. "The spirits of those who died won't rest until the truth is revealed." Jack nodded slowly, his expression one of resignation and sorrow. "You're right, Sam. It's time we made things right." The fairground was closed the next day. An official investigation launched. The truth was made public, and the families of the victims were finally given the answers they had sought for so long. The fair's owners were held accountable, their legacy of greed and corruption laid bare for all to see. As the fairground was dismantled, the spirits began to fade, their whispers growing softer, their presence less tangible. Sam felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had helped them find closure. The past had been laid to rest, and with it, the ghosts that had haunted him for so long. But as he left the fairground for the final time, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He turned back and saw a figure standing at the edge of the grounds, a boy with bright blue eyes and a stuffed bear in his arms. Tommy smiled at him, a look of gratitude in his eyes, before fading into the night. The fairground was gone, but the memories would remain. Sam had uncovered the truth, and in doing so, he had set the spirits free. The echoes of the past had been silenced, and the future, for the first time in years, felt bright and hopeful. The fairground was deserted, the rides dismantled, and the colorful tents packed away. Yet the echoes of the past still lingered in the empty spaces, a haunting reminder of the tragedy that had once unfolded here. Sam stood in front of his now empty booth, the memories of the past few days swirling in his mind. The ghosts had been laid to rest, but their presence still weighed heavily on his soul. With the fair closed for the investigation, Sam was at a crossroads. The evidence had been handed over to the authorities, and the owners were facing justice. Yet he felt a strange compulsion to return to the site, as if there was something left unfinished, a final piece of the puzzle that needed to be uncovered. One evening, unable to resist the pull any longer, Sam returned to the fairground. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty space. The air was still, the silence profound. Sam made his way to his booth, now nothing more than a skeletal frame. As he approached, he felt a familiar chill in the air, a cold breeze that seemed to carry with it the whispers of the past. The booth, even in its dismantled state, felt alive with a strange energy, as if it were a portal to another world. Sam stood in the center of the booth, his mind racing with thoughts of the spirits he had encountered. He closed his eyes, focusing on the memories, the voices, the faces of those who had reached out to him. The air around him grew colder, the whispers louder, more insistent. "Help us." The voice was faint, but clear. Sam opened his eyes and saw a figure standing before him, a young girl, her eyes wide with fear and sadness. She was one of the victims, a child whose life had been cut short by the tragedy. "What do you need me to do?" Sam asked, his voice trembling. The girl pointed to a small rusted box hidden beneath the booth. Sam knelt down and pulled it out, his hands shaking. The box was old, its metal surface covered in grime and rust. He opened it carefully, revealing a collection of letters, photographs, and a small worn diary. As he sifted through the contents, Sam realized that these were personal belongings of the victims, mementos of their lives, their hopes, their dreams. The diary belonged to the girl standing before him, a record of her thoughts and experiences. Reading the diary, Sam felt a deep connection to the child, her words a poignant reminder of the lives lost. The final entries were heartbreaking, detailing her excitement for the fair, her dreams of winning a prize, her final moments of joy before the tragedy struck. Tears streamed down Sam's face as he closed the diary. He understood now what the spirits needed. They wanted their stories to be told, their memories to be honored. The Fairground had been a place of joy and excitement for them, and their lives deserved to be remembered. Sam spent the next few days gathering more personal items and stories from the families of the victims. He spoke with parents, siblings, friends, piecing together the lives that had been lost. Each story was a thread in the tapestry of the Fairground's history, a testament to the vibrant lives that had once filled the space with laughter and love. With the help of the local community, Sam organized a memorial at the Fairground. The event was somber, yet filled with a sense of healing. Photographs and mementos were displayed, stories were shared, and the names of the victims were honored. As the sun set on the day of the memorial, the Fairground was filled with a gentle, comforting light. The whispers that had haunted Sam for so long were gone, replaced by a sense of peace. The spirits had been honored, their memories preserved, and the Fairground was finally at rest. Sam stood at the edge of the Fairground, looking out at the gathering of people. He felt a profound sense of closure, knowing that he had done everything he could to honor the spirits and the memories of those who had been lost. As he turned to leave, he saw Tommy once more, standing at the edge of the crowd. The boy smiled at him, a look of gratitude and peace in his eyes. Sam smiled back, feeling a warmth in his heart that he hadn't felt in years. The Fairground was no longer haunted by the past. The spirits had found their peace, and Sam had found his purpose. The haunted booth, once a place of darkness and fear, was now a beacon of hope and remembrance. And as Sam walked away, he knew that the Fairground and the spirits of those who had died there would always hold a special place in his heart. The Fairground had transformed from a place of tragedy to a poignant memorial, but Sam's journey was far from over. The spirits had found peace, yet there were still unanswered questions lingering in the shadows. Sam felt a persistent tug at his consciousness, as if something important had yet to be revealed. One afternoon, As Sam was sorting through some remaining items from the fair, a knock at his trailer door startled him. He opened it to find a woman standing there, her presence commanding yet gentle. She was tall and thin, with silver hair that shimmered in the sunlight. Her eyes were a piercing blue, holding a depth of knowledge that sent a shiver down Sam's spine. "Hello, Sam," she said, her voice soft but firm. "My name is Eleanor. I'm a medium, and I've been drawn here by the restless spirits. They have a message for you." Sam felt a mix of skepticism and curiosity. He had encountered many charlatans in his time, but something about Eleanor felt different. He invited her inside, offering her a seat at the small table. Eleanor looked around the trailer, her eyes scanning the mementos and photographs. "The spirits are grateful for what you've done, but there's still something they need you to understand. There's a deeper secret buried here, one that has kept them tethered to this place." Sam leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Eleanor closed her eyes, her breathing steady and rhythmic. "There's a force at work here, something malevolent that has fed off the pain and suffering. It has kept the spirits trapped, using their anguish to grow stronger. The Ferris wheel was not just an accident, it was a manifestation of this darkness." Sam's mind raced. He had always felt there was more to the tragedy than met the eye, but this revelation was far beyond anything he had imagined. "What do I need to do?" Eleanor opened her eyes, fixing Sam with a serious gaze. "We must perform a cleansing ritual to banish this entity and free the spirits completely. It won't be easy, and it will require your full commitment. The spirits trust you, Sam, and they believe you can help them find peace." Sam nodded, feeling a sense of determination. "I'll do whatever it takes." Eleanor smiled, a look of approval in her eyes. "Good. We'll need to gather certain items for the ritual, symbols of the spirits' lives and the tragedy that befell them. We must also perform the ritual at the Ferris wheel, where the darkness is strongest." Over the next few days, Sam and Eleanor worked tirelessly to prepare for the ritual. They collected personal items from the families, each one a symbol of the lives lost. They also gathered herbs, candles, and other ritualistic tools, following Eleanor's instructions to the letter. The night of the ritual was clear and calm, the sky a canopy of stars. Sam and Eleanor set up the ritual space at the base of the Ferris wheel, arranging the items in a precise pattern. The air was thick with anticipation, the fairground eerily silent. As they began the ritual, Eleanor chanted in a language Sam didn't recognize, her voice rising and falling in a haunting melody. Sam focused on the task at hand, his mind clear and determined. He could feel the presence of the spirits around them, their energy palpable. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the fairground, extinguishing the candles. The air grew cold, and a sense of foreboding filled the space. Sam felt a malevolent force pressing down on him, the darkness Eleanor had spoken of. "Stay strong, Sam," Eleanor called out, her voice steady. "We're almost there." Sam closed his eyes, focusing on the faces of the spirits he had encountered. He thought of Tommy, of the young girl and her diary, of all the lives that had been lost. He poured his heart into the ritual, willing the darkness to release its hold. There was a sudden, intense pressure followed by a blinding flash of light. Sam was thrown to the ground, his senses overwhelmed. When he opened his eyes, the air was clear, the oppressive darkness gone. Eleanor helped him to his feet, a look of exhaustion and relief on her face. "It's done," she said softly. "The entity has been banished, and the spirits are free." Sam looked around, the fairground feeling lighter, more peaceful. He could sense the presence of the spirits fading, their whispers turning to gentle murmurs of gratitude. He knew they had found the peace they deserved. As Eleanor prepared to leave, Sam thanked her, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you." Eleanor smiled, a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. "You had the strength all along, Sam. The spirits knew it, and now you do too." Sam watched as she walked away, disappearing into the night. The fairground was quiet, the echoes of the past finally at rest. Sam knew he had found his purpose, and that the spirit's stories would live on through him. The darkness had been banished, and in its place was a sense of hope and renewal. The fairground, once haunted by tragedy, was now a place of healing and remembrance. And as Sam stood there, he felt a deep connection to the spirits and their journey, knowing that he had played a part in bringing them peace. The fairground was at peace, but Sam knew there were still questions left unanswered. The malevolent force had been banished, and the spirits had found rest, but the true cause of the Ferris wheel accident remained a mystery. Determined to uncover the final pieces of the puzzle, Sam set out to delve deeper into the fairground's dark history. Sam returned to the fairground's archives, a dusty, forgotten room in the town hall filled with boxes of old records, photographs, and newspaper clippings. He spent hours sifting through the documents, piecing together a timeline of events leading up to the tragic accident. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the brink of a significant discovery. One afternoon, Sam found a file marked "Confidential." Inside, he discovered a series of correspondences between the fair's owners and a company responsible for the maintenance of the rides. The letters detailed numerous warnings about the Ferris wheel's structural integrity, warnings that had been ignored in favor of keeping the fair running and profitable. Sam's heart sank as he read through the documents. The warnings were explicit, the dangers clear. Yet the owners had chosen to silence the engineers and proceed with the fair, putting countless lives at risk. The accident had been a direct result of their greed and negligence. Among the documents, Sam found a name that stood out: Peter Harris, the lead engineer who had raised the initial concerns about the Ferris wheel. Peter had been silenced and blacklisted after the accident, his warnings buried under layers of bureaucracy and denial. Sam knew he needed to find Peter and hear his story. After some investigation, Sam tracked Peter down to a small town a few hours away. Peter was hesitant to talk at first, his experiences having left him disillusioned and wary. But Sam's sincerity and the weight of the truth he had uncovered convinced Peter to share his story. Over coffee in a quiet diner, Peter recounted the events leading up to the accident. He spoke of the repeated warnings he had issued, the ignored maintenance requests, and the increasing pressure from the fair's owners to keep the rides operational at any cost. His frustration and helplessness were palpable, his voice tinged with regret and sorrow. "They didn't care about the safety of the visitors," Peter said, his hands shaking slightly as he took a sip of coffee. "All they cared about was the money. When the Ferris wheel collapsed, I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. But they did everything they could to bury it." Sam felt a surge of anger and determination. The fair's owners had not only caused the deaths of innocent people, but had also destroyed the lives of those who had tried to prevent the tragedy. Peter's story was the final piece of the puzzle, a damning indictment of the corruption and greed that had led to the accident. Armed with this new information, Sam returned to the town, determined to make the truth known. He gathered the evidence he had collected and approached a local journalist, someone he trusted to handle the story with the care and integrity it deserved. The exposé that followed was explosive. The town was shocked by the revelations, the fair's owners disgraced and facing legal action. The families of the victims were finally given the closure they had sought for so long, their loved ones' deaths no longer a tragic accident, but a preventable disaster. Sam felt a sense of vindication, knowing that he had played a part in uncovering the truth. The spirit's whispers had led him to this moment, their restless energy driving him to seek justice. The Fairground, once a place of darkness and sorrow, had become a beacon of truth and healing. In the days that followed, Sam found himself at peace for the first time in years. The memories of the past no longer haunted him, the faces of the spirits now a source of strength and inspiration. He knew that his journey was far from over, but he felt ready to face whatever came next. One evening, as the sun set over the Fairground, Sam stood at the site of the Ferris wheel, now a memorial to the lives lost. He placed a single flower at the base of the monument, a symbol of remembrance and hope. The whispers were gone, replaced by a profound silence. But in that silence, Sam felt the presence of the spirits, their gratitude and peace. He knew they were watching over him, their stories intertwined with his own. The mystery had been unraveled, the truth revealed. And as Sam looked out over the Fairground, he felt a sense of closure and purpose. The past had been laid to rest, and the future, for the first time in years, felt bright and hopeful. The Fairground was finally at peace, its dark secrets revealed, and the spirits that had haunted it set free. However, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that there was one last confrontation waiting for him. The fair's former owners had been brought to justice, but the entity that had thrived on the tragedy seemed to linger in the shadows, a malevolent presence that refused to be completely banished. Sam spent his days working to restore the Fairground as a place of remembrance and healing, but the nights were filled with restless dreams. The visions of the past still haunted him, and he knew that he had to face the darkness one final time to ensure that it would never return. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the Fairground was bathed in the glow of twilight, Sam prepared for the final confrontation. He had gathered everything he needed, a collection of personal items from the victims, blessed candles, and the knowledge he had gained from Eleanor's ritual. He knew that the entity thrived on fear and sorrow, and he was determined to confront it head-on. Sam returned to the Ferris wheel, now a silent sentinel standing over the Fairground. The air was thick with tension, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Sam lit the candles, their flickering flames casting an eerie glow. He arranged the personal items in a circle, creating a protective barrier against the malevolent force. As he stood in the center of the circle, Sam closed his eyes and began to speak, his voice steady and clear. "I know you're here. I know you've fed on the pain and suffering of this place for far too long. But your time is over. The spirits have found peace, and it's time for you to leave." The air grew colder, and Sam felt a presence closing in around him. The shadows seemed to coalesce, forming a dark, swirling mass at the edge of the circle. The malevolent force was strong, its energy palpable, but Sam stood his ground, his determination unwavering. "You have no power here," Sam continued, his voice rising above the howling wind. "The truth has been revealed, and the spirits are free. You can't hold on to this place any longer." The entity roared, a sound of pure rage and frustration that echoed through the Fairground. The shadows surged forward, testing the boundaries of the circle, but the candles burned brightly, their light holding the darkness at bay. Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out the diary of the young girl, the final piece of the puzzle. He held it up, its pages fluttering in the wind. This is a record of the lives you've taken, the memories you've tried to erase, but they're stronger than you. Their stories will live on, and you will be forgotten." The entity writhed, its form shifting and changing, but it could not break through the circle. Sam felt a surge of power and confidence, the spirits of the Fairground lending him their strength. He took a step forward, the diary held high, and the darkness began to recede. With a final, defiant cry, the entity dissolved into the night, its power broken. The air grew still, and the oppressive weight that had hung over the Fairground lifted. The candles burned steadily, their light a beacon of hope and renewal. Sam stood in the center of the circle, his heart pounding, a sense of triumph and relief washing over him. The final confrontation was over, and the malevolent force that had haunted the Fairground was gone. The spirits had been avenged, their memories honored, and the Fairground was finally at peace. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Sam extinguished the candles and gathered the personal items, placing them carefully back in the box. He knew that the Fairground would always hold a special place in his heart, a place of remembrance and healing. Sam walked away from the Ferris wheel, the weight of the past lifted from his shoulders. He felt a sense of closure and purpose, knowing that he had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The Fairground was no longer a place of tragedy, but a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of truth. The final confrontation had been won, and Sam knew that the future, for the first time in years, was filled with hope and possibility. The Fairground, once a place of sorrow, had become a symbol of resilience and redemption. And as Sam looked out over the Fairground, he knew that he had finally found peace,